Hearing versus listening, take one, action.
There is one thing that can completely transform how you navigate relationships and help you handle life's toughest challenges. And because the brain takes the path of least resistance, most of us fail at it and experience a lot of unnecessary grief. But this does not have to be your story, my friend. Keep watching to learn the one shift you need to make that can make the difference between staying stuck and moving forward while enjoying rewarding relationships with others. Let's start with something fun. I'm going to play a clip for you, and I want you to listen carefully. What you might hear just might surprise you. Ready?
That is embarrassing! That is embarrassing! That is embarrassing! That is embarrassing!
Now, what did you hear? Pretty wild, right? Some of you probably heard Bart Simpson bouncing, Bart Simpson bouncing.
That is embarrassing! That is embarrassing! That is embarrassing! That is embarrassing!
While others maybe heard something entirely different, like, that is embarrassing, that is embarrassing.
That is embarrassing! That is embarrassing! That is embarrassing! That is embarrassing!
Or how about this one? Lettuce and parsley, lettuce and parsley.
That is embarrassing! That is embarrassing! That is embarrassing! That is embarrassing!
You see how this works? This phenomena is called an auditory illusion, where your brain interprets sounds based on its own biases and expectations. We're going somewhere, right? It's a reminder that we think that what we think we hear isn't always the full story. This little experiment shows how easily our brains can play tricks on us. But here's the kicker. The same thing happens in our conversations too. Listening is serious business. In fact, it's the difference between staying stuck and finding freedom, between trauma and healing. We've seen it in Good Will Hunting with the powerful breakthrough between Sean, played by Robin Williams, and Will, played by Matt Damon. And that iconic scene, Sean's true listening, not just to Will's words, but to his underlying pain, is what finally allows Will to start healing. Listening is more than just hearing words. It's about understanding what's beneath them. Think of Zoe Kravitz's new movie, Blink Twice. Ooh, good one too. You need to go see it. Where true listening, whether to others, to nonverbal cues, or even to one's own body, allowed characters to uncover hidden truths and ultimately empowered them in perilous situations. Understanding the difference between hearing and listening is how I've remained married for over 26 years. My goodness. Real connection happens when we actively listen to the feelings, the fears, and the desires behind the words. As Esther Perel says in The State of Affairs, when we listen actively, we hear more than words. We hear the underlying feelings, the fears, desires that drive those words. That's why active listening is the key to resolving conflicts and building deeper, lasting relationships. It's about more than just hearing words. It's about truly understanding and connecting. Let's dive into why that matters. Did you know that when someone feels truly listened to, their brain releases two key chemicals that make it feel like they've just received a safe hug? First one, oxytocin, often referred to as the love hormone or the bonding chemical. Oxytocin is released during a positive social interaction, such as feeling understood and valued. It promotes feelings of trust, empathy, and bonding, helping to create a sense of safety and closeness. Serotonin is the second one. This neurotransmitter is associated with mood regulation and well-being. When someone feels genuinely listened to and validated, serotonin levels can increase, leading to feelings of happiness, satisfaction, and emotional stability. Wow, all of that just from giving someone just from listening to make sure someone felt like they just received a safe hug. Folks, there's value in this. Imagine that, the power of making someone feel safe, valued, and understood just by listening. You're not just hearing words, you're giving them the gift of comfort and connection. Think of it like this: you're basically a walking, talking serotonin and oxytocin delivery machine when you genuinely listen to someone. Who knew that being a good listener could make you a hero of hugs? So the next time you listen, remember, it's not just about the words, it's about creating that warm, safe space. Let's explore how you could become a master of this. There's a big difference between hearing and listening. And folks think that because they heard you, they listen. You know how they say, oh, I heard you, but they really didn't. My husband's guilty of that. Hearing is automatic. It's what your ears do. But listening, my friends, is a choice. It's what your heart and your mind has to do. When you move from hearing to listening, you shift from surface level interactions to deep, meaningful connections. You're no longer just reacting, you are responding with intentionality. Take a look at this chart, this comparison. When you're hearing, you give the illusion of this surface piece, it's really fake, when you pretend to hear or you give the impression you're hearing because you hear the sounds. But if you're not intentional about connecting, that's it. When you're listening, though, conversely, you're building connection. So we have surface level versus building connection. Hearing is limited. Listening is expansive. Hearing is often selfish, whereas listening is generous. Hearing, reactive. Listening, responsive. Hearing, autopilot. Listening, you must be intentional. Think of hearing as being on autopilot, like when you're nodding, yeah, during any kind of conversation or during a Zoom meeting. How about that? When really you're thinking about planning dinner, or you're probably taking notes, giving the illusion that you're listening. But listening, maybe that's just me. Okay, sorry. But listening, that's like being the pilot, fully engaged and steering the conversation towards connection. Hearing might keep things on the surface, but listening lets you dive deep. And when you do, you're not just communicating, you're connecting. Let's look at some common pitfalls, though, to listening and how you can avoid them. Here are 6 common ways people listen, but they're really just hearing. The first 3 are about hearing for self-serving connection or self-serving purposes, if you will, while the last 3 are disruptive. They disrupt connection. So here's the first 3. Here's the first one: listening to fix. This occurs when someone listens with the sole intention of solving the speaker's problem, often jumping in with advice before fully understanding the issue. Now, I must confess, that is one I have to be very intentional about, because as being, an educator, an analytical, a strategist, that's kind of my default. So I have to make sure I'm careful. They didn't ask for your help, Hyatt. Just listen. This is when an example could be where a friend starts venting about a tough day at work. And before they can finish, you interrupt with, well, here's what you need to do. Now, I don't interrupt, but you say, here's what you need to do, rather than letting them express their feelings. Although my husband may disagree. He may say, I'm trying to fix. But I'm sorry, let me get back on track. Listening to compare is another self-serving way to listen. This is the type of listening when someone listens just to measure the speaker's experience against their own, often leading to that one-upmanship. An example may look like this: a colleague shares that they're tired from working late, and you immediately respond, you think that's bad? I worked 60 hours last week. We've all experienced this. The third type of self-serving listening is listening to prepare. This is where the listener is more focused on formulating their response rather than understanding the speaker's point of view, often missing key details. Might look like this: during a debate, instead of truly hearing what the other person is saying, you're mentally crafting your rebuttal, eager to jump in just as soon as they pause. Ooh, I know you've experienced that one too. I almost called her name out. Good job, Paya. All right, these next three are more disruptive. They disrupt connection automatically, but I need you to lean in and pay attention. Listening to judge. It occurs when someone listens with a critical mindset, just waiting to find a flaw or reason to disapprove, rather than trying to understand the speaker. An example might be a friend shares a personal decision, and you immediately think, that's a terrible idea, and start mentally listing all the reasons why they're wrong. The next one is listening to dismiss. This is when someone listens just enough to brush off or invalidate the speaker's thoughts or feelings, often due to a lack of interest or disagreement. Might look like this: a partner expresses concern about something, and you reply, overreacting, without even considering their perspective. And the final one is listening for confirmation bias. And let me just stop there. Oh my goodness. This is one we all have to be very intentional about because it's our natural default. I'll talk more about this in another video about how the brain works, but we are all guilty and capable of defaulting to confirmation bias without intentionality. So this is where the listener is only interested in hearing things that confirm their pre-existing beliefs or opinions, ignoring anything that contradicts them. Ooh, this is the season for that, huh? So, like in a political discussion, you only pay attention to the points that support your views and disregard anything that challenges them, thinking that's just more evidence that I'm right. Now that we can do a whole video on that for another day. But I just need you to understand the seriousness of how listening for confirmation bias or with that as a bias doesn't lead to connection, leads to separation. Recognizing these habits can help you shift from self-serving to becoming a selfless listener, where your focus is entirely on the other person. Let's be honest, we've all been guilty of this. Who hasn't listened to compare or to prepare a snappy comeback? It's like playing a mental game of I can top that. In fact, take a moment and ask yourself, how are you listening to me right now? Ooh, gotcha. By understanding these pitfalls, you can consciously move away from them towards genuine listening. So let's challenge ourselves to listen differently in our next conversation. So I'm going to throw a challenge out to you. So the next time you have a conversation, I want you to do this. Try listening from one of these positions: curiosity, love, or gratitude. When you listen with curiosity, you open doors to learning. When you listen with love, you build deeper connections. And when you listen with gratitude, you create a positive exchange that lifts both of you up. I want you to give that a try. After the conversation, with your intentional position of listening, take a moment and reflect. How did it feel? What did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about the other person? What did you learn about life? Okay, now that we've explored the difference between hearing and listening, the chemistry of connection, and how to avoid common listening traps, let's remember that listening is a powerful tool for building relationships that matter. It's not just about exchanging words, it's about exchanging understanding and care. Remember, listening isn't just a skill, it's an art. And with a little practice, you can turn every conversation into a masterpiece while building healthy relationships. Now, you may be saying, Pi, I don't need everything to be a masterpiece. You know what I'm saying. You can get the most out of the experience when you choose to listen as opposed to just hear. So take this listening challenge on. Be mindful of how you engage and watch your relationships flourish. Thanks for joining me. And let's continue to connect one conversation at a time. How's that sound, folks? All right, I have to leave you with a little chuckle. Here it is. Why did the conversation feel like a one-man show? Because the listener was too busy mentally rehearsing their lines. Chuckle, chuckle. Thank you for your time. I would appreciate it if you would hit the subscribe button. And if you felt like you got something out of this, which you should have, go ahead and hit like. And you need to probably share this with someone who could probably stand to learn the difference between hearing versus listening. All right. Have a great day and a winning week. Bye-bye.